Hello, my name is Darren Clark and I'm the Managing Director of Succeed with Dyslexia, and we have another fantastic guest, not just one, but two incredible guests who are going to be able to share with us in another part of the world about the incredible work that they're doing with regards to dyslexia. So I'd like to say a massive welcome to you both. Would you mind just introducing yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, the organisation, and kind of how you got started? That'd be amazing.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Darren. It's great to be on the podcast. This is Suzanne, my lovely wife.
Hi.
We've been involved in dyslexia since we founded the Dyslexia Foundation in New Zealand back in 2006. And there's a backstory as to why we did that. But essentially, we were frustrated with where New Zealand was at that particular point in time. And we had discovered our own dyslexia in our family, which was with our then youngest child. And then subsequent to that, Suzanne discovered her own dyslexia. And so that's kind of what got us into the dyslexia space. And we've been working in that space actively for the last 15 years. We've been focused on education, the education sector initially, the justice sector, workplace, and now we're focused on what we can do for the individual. So we're very passionate. We've been involved in it a long time. We're seasoned in this space. But we're still incredibly energetic and passionate about it.
So in 2006, when we founded the Dyslexia Foundation, New Zealand actually didn't recognise dyslexia at all. So there was no recognition there. So that's where our journey began and why we set up the foundation, to lobby the Ministry of Education for change. And hence we are still working in that area and have varying degrees of success with the recognition of dyslexia within our classrooms. And, you know, it's frustrating at times. It's wonderful at times. But, you know, there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of children out there still in New Zealand, you know, some, 70,000 children who are dyslexic and who are not actually receiving the education that they deserve. So we're really passionate in that area.
I think just the last comment to round off that context is that Suzanne and I do the Dyslexia Foundation part-time and on a voluntary basis. What we do full-time is that we're both involved in a business that I co-founded 38 years ago, which is Cookie Time Limited, which is an entrepreneurial, innovation-led business here in New Zealand. It's got an iconic brand. So we're very involved in, the fast-moving consumer space and, actively involved in that area too. And we've got a family of 4 as well. So, in our late 50s, we've got a lot of experience to be able to draw on in order to bring that to the dyslexia space as well.
We also have 2 grandchildren, and our youngest just started school, our oldest grandson just started school yesterday at 5. So we're on the journey in the education sector yet again. So we're got open minds, and we'll see where the journey takes our 5-year-old grandson.
Absolutely. And I feel you've unpacked so many different things there, and it's incredible what you're doing. In your country, that was a staggering statistic that you mentioned. Was it 700,000 children?
70,000
that are struggling within the educational system. I mean, it's quite a staggering number to try and gauge within kind of the educational side of it.
Yeah, so that's a number that's derived from, that's actually 10% of the students that are in the primary and secondary education system at the moment. The number's actually bigger than that because, I think dyslexia is closer to 15%, not closer to 10. We use 10 as a conservative number. But then you've got all the other neurodiversities, whether it be Asperger's and high-functioning autism and dyspraxia and the rest of it, which collectively we've probably got 20 to 23% of those children in the New Zealand system that have some form of neurodiversity that are struggling to some degree or otherwise with a system that is trying to do the best that it can and making progress, but nonetheless, the experience for the vast majority is still one of struggle.
And until we essentially see a change with the training institutes that train our teachers, there's limited amount of change that actually happens within the schools. One of the things that did happen in New Zealand, because New Zealand was very late to the frame in terms of recognising dyslexia, we were actually able to have dyslexia recognised in New Zealand not as a disability. So it's never been framed up as a disability in New Zealand, which has been great on one regard. So we've framed it up as a difference or a learning preference, which is fabulous for those who are dyslexic, who don't need a label of disability sitting with them. But it also meant that there is no funding for dyslexic individuals in New Zealand within the education system.
And that's a massive thing, isn't it? You know, funding to help support. And again, when we look at kind of educational and the teaching side of it, say, you know, I can kind of resonate with dyslexia in the sense that I you know, a late diagnosis, which you know, for me, I was diagnosed at the age of 36. So that was a very late diagnosis. But if you think in a average school class in the UK, I guess it's, you know, it could be anything from say 25 children. It may be increased. And if you think, you know, they say dyslexia, it could be, you know, 1 in 5, 1 in 10, you know, statistically, there is a large amount, as you mentioned, of dyslexic children in the school, and then having the facilities of a teacher that is trained to help within that. It's a vast thing to make sure that we've got the adequate amount of teachers to the amount of children, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's important when you're talking about teacher training. I think that there's a lot of work being done in New Zealand at the moment around the science of reading and phonetics and bringing in those hard skills around the objective of teaching to read, and that's all good. However, as we know, dyslexia turns up in the classroom not only as a difficulty to read and spell, it also turns up as a different way of thinking, which means that you're going to respond to all sorts of different situations in a different way to the neurotypical child, and that's our key focus. I think that the reading side of things and the tutoring will take its natural course, and that's all good. But we have to recognise that just because a dyslexic individual can read or even spell well doesn't mean that dyslexia doesn't turn up in difficulties as they travel through the system, various systems, and into adulthood.
There's still a reasonable amount of naivety out there that if you teach as soon as a dyslexic individual or child learns to read or spell, they're no longer dyslexic. So, you know, the myth that is still out there circulating, which as adult dyslexics, we know is absolutely not the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, just picking up on what Suzanne said, when we originally framed up dyslexia in New Zealand, we said the only difficulty or disability aspect of dyslexia is self-esteem. And so, you know, if you're having difficulties in the education system, struggling to read, struggling to spell, and struggling in other areas, then, you know, the problem is that is a problem in itself. But the greater problem is that you're integrating a sense of being less than, and that's what then continues the struggle throughout the education system, and then and carries on as a residual for the individual as they work and as they move into the case. They are successful on the outside, but inside they feel that they are still less than because they've had those experiences. And we feel that that's the piece of the puzzle that doesn't get enough airtime and doesn't have enough specific and explicit opportunity to resolve for the individual. It's just something that's in the background. But it's very real when you live with.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. If we look at the kind of the journey, you know, through the kind of the school. So over in the UK, we have primary school, and then it goes to secondary school, and then college, university, and then the workplace. You know, that if you were to stay in the educational system, that would be, you know, the typical route, or, you know, that would be the kind of the set route for the educational side within, you know, the UK. But if you think about a child, say they get the support within the primary school, so, you know, up to the age of, say, 11 years old, and then they go to the state school, so the secondary school, and they go all the way there till, I don't know, 16, 17. If they have support within this, and I mean, you know, the actual, maybe some a teacher's help them with their dyslexia, it normally stops then, because I know you do kind of work within the workplace, but that support still needs to be there. I mean, what would be the perfect scenario would be, you know, to start in school and have that support, go into the workplace, and then the workplace accommodate and have that support. I just find that there's so many broken links, and I'm sure you've witnessed that.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think that the common denominator of that whole journey right through into workplace is the need for accommodations, okay, and that they turn up in primary school and secondary school and in the university. To a greater extent in the UK, workplace accommodations are commonplace. In New Zealand, that's not the case, but there is certainly that's certainly a growing part. But even if you have accommodations, okay, what's even better than accommodations is having the individual really understanding who they are. Now, if they do understand who they are and what their needs are, they're going to be able to express what the accommodations are that they need, but they're also going to be able to navigate situations where accommodations aren't available. You know, when you walk into the grocery store and you get presented with a difficult situation, or you walk into a particular admin office and, you know, accommodations at that point in time aren't going to be useful to you. You need to actually be an individual at cause, somebody who can deal with any particular situation easily on the fly. And so one of our key objectives or aspirational visions for the dyslexia journey is that by the time that the student leaves secondary school, so this would be somebody who is 17 or 18 years of age, and they're either moving on to university or moving on to the workplace or some other form of education. At that point in time, we want them to feel that they are an empowered individual who owns their dyslexia, who can disclose their dyslexia when it's appropriate to, not disclose it when they don't want to, but know how to be able to navigate and have the mindsets and strategies that are going to be useful for them as they travel through beyond school. And so that's our aspiration. And what's on the optimistic side of what's happening in New Zealand, there is a growing cohort of young people who are travelling through the education system, who are coming out as truly empowered young people who can navigate going forward. But, you know, that's the cohort that we want to grow. And learning to read and spell and all of those kind of things is going to be helpful, but we also need an education system that is able to respond to and inform and educate the appropriate mindsets and how to travel in that space.
One of the wonderful things that we are seeing in New Zealand is, since the recognition of dyslexia, the understanding of the students who are dyslexic and those who are their peers. Because what we're actually finding is that as a young person owns their dyslexia and is confident enough to stand up and say, I'm dyslexic, their peers actually start to relate to them quite differently. And it becomes something within education where that collaboration, and you do this really well and I do that really well, and together we can be brilliant. We're seeing a lot more of that. And one of our hopes is that as these students become our workforce, our teachers, they will go into the education system with a completely different view of what dyslexia is and how to actually help those young people in the classroom. That's a really positive piece that we are seeing. Is it's not something you have to hide. It's not something to be ashamed of. And it's, a real benefit in the classroom to everybody. We've always used an analogy, if you can teach dyslexia is the sharp end of the stick. And if a teacher can teach a dyslexic student, it not only benefits the dyslexic student, but it benefits every student in the class.
Yeah, our motto in that space is get it right for dyslexia, get it right for all, because dyslexia presents in a way that requires the people around the person who's dyslexic to have a degree of empathy and understanding and look for ways to how to support that individual and change what's happening in the organisation or in the particular setting. And if they do that, not only does the dyslexic individual have a better experience, but everybody and the whole environment is improved. So there's all of that.
Absolutely. And I feel, from my own kind of experience of confidence, when I look back on the educational system, I actually left with no qualifications because they didn't allow me to kind of sit any exams, because a lot of the time they were kind of, sort of shifting me around to see where I fit, because, I'm talking kind of school in the, late 70s, kind of 80s. So it was, and I know, there has been some support and some changes within the educational system, but for me, undiagnosed dyslexia was a real struggle. So I always remember kind of primary school as this picture of school being fantastic. And then when I went into secondary school, it was, as you alluded to, it was a real knock of the confidence, day in, day out, because you would go to these lessons feeling unequipped to attend them. And, there's a lot of peer pressure. And suddenly, when you're being called out to, walk up to the front of the board and write something or read out loud, or those are going to be a knock on your confidence. And as you mentioned, dyslexia is not just about, reading, it's behavioral. It's so many different attributes that comes to that. So I know, so by the end of school, you could then be going into the workplace, as you said, not feeling, massively confident in that space. And then it just continues, doesn't it?
If you're carrying a lack of confidence, a low self-esteem, a limiting belief, a disempowered mindset, whatever words you use for the feeling of feeling less than, if you turn up with that to any setting, and you've just mentioned, the secondary school setting, if you turn up to class with that feeling, it is going to have a drop-down menu of behaviour and what you do and what you can't do. And that's most often the missing piece. People see the behaviour, they see the academic performance, all of those things are easily identified, and they focus on those, but they don't focus on what's sitting underneath the surface. If they did, which really is just about having empathy, reaching out, listening, those soft skills, the trajectory and the way that individual turns up in the classroom or any other setting is changed. But what's even more powerful than that is, again, if you rely on others to have those soft skills, or if you rely on the education system or the justice system or the workplace environment to provide you with this or provide you with that, or to have more empathy, you're really giving away your power to those systems. And so the emphasis that we have in from the Dyslexia Foundation's perspective in New Zealand at the moment is to place not so much the responsibility, but it kind of is, but encourage the dyslexic individual and the family unit to recognise that they can be at cause in any particular situation, take charge and be on the front foot, and not be the effect of the circumstances that they're presented with. And although that sounds like a complicated, deep kind of journey, what we're discovering is techniques and methods and approaches that can actually shift that mindset very, very quickly. And when that mindset is shifted, everything changes. And we're having tremendous success on a one-to-one basis here in New Zealand about changing mindsets and giving people strategies in that space of putting them at cause.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things here within especially in the secondary education, not a lot changes from the primary into secondary, other than the student gets older. Well, one of the things that happens within going into university, interesting here, is if we can encourage our secondary students and students from a young age to advocate for themselves, and initially it's all about the family advocating for them. And as we know, generally, if you've got a dyslexic child, one or other of the parents is dyslexic or a grandparent. So there's empathy, or can be empathy, within the family. If the parent or grandparent has had a really difficult time, there's varying degrees of empathy there, or there can be that just toughen up, I got through, so you will too, which we know isn't helpful for the adult dyslexic or the child. But when the students move into university, one of the really pieces that we are really hopeful is how well they can advocate for themselves. And one of our experiences here for New Zealand with our youngest son, which really thrilled us, was when he entered university, he completely advocated for himself. he went to the special learning departments and organised the use of his computer, the use of extra time in his exams. And he said, this is what I need. This is what is how I'm going to be successful and succeed. And universities want their students to succeed. So it's quite a different perspective from primary, secondary, and then that jump into university, because universities want the students to succeed. Whereas in secondary school and in primary school, it's a bit more of you must fit in and this is the way we do it. And if you don't fit that, then you're on the outside essentially. And there's a lot more opportunities to succeed once they move into university, or if they move into the workforce and find a work environment that actually acknowledges their skills. Because as we know, they're not necessarily traditional skills.
Absolutely. And there's so much that we're learning. Again, the incredible work that you're doing, in your country, the fantastic work that you're doing to help dyslexic students. We would love to revisit and catch up with you guys a few more times, because there's so many things that I feel that we can unpack more with the educational side, definitely the workplace, and the kind of the justice, kind of the prison side of it as well. We would absolutely love to have you back onto our show and get more information from that.
Sure.
What I would say is I absolutely love the work that you're doing, and long may it continue, because I know that you're helping so many individuals, like myself, late diagnosis, helping as many people as we can, and having that kind of that point of call to go to, and that and be that voice is just so important. How do people get in touch? I mean, we will share all your details anyway, in the sense, but how do people get in touch with your?
Yeah, you just simply Google Dyslexia Foundation of New Zealand. We've got a full website and all of that, so you can contact us through that. Love to hear from anybody in terms of what we're doing. And I come back to the cutting edge work that we're doing is around how to change the belief structure of individuals who are dyslexic and how powerful that can be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us.
Welcome.
Definitely be revisiting yourself again and helping share the incredible work you're doing. Thank you so much again. Have an incredible day, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Yep, thanks, Aaron.
Pleasant evening to you.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did putting it together. Now we have another fantastic piece of content for you. Please feel free to click this link here and learn more about Jamie Baker, who works as an educational therapist, and some of the things, strides, and obstacles she's seen throughout her career. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.